Hi there BookTube, it's Eleanor here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the books that I've read for the first week of Non-Fiction November. It's been a good week so far. I'm only part way through. In fact, I'm only 4 days into November, so pretty good start so far, and I've got 4 books to talk to you about at the moment, and then I may tack on some more if I read any more before the end of the week. The first one I want to talk to you about is Guts by Raina Telgemeier. This is the story of a part of, or a portion of, Raina's childhood where she suffered from stomach aches and anxiety. Waking up one night with a terrible upset stomach, Raina thinks it's probably just a bug. Her parents have had bugs, and she feels like it's probably just a stomach bug, and she goes to school as usual. But then she starts to become quite unnerved and disgusted by all the gross talk and the cootie talks and the sick and the people being sick places and all the sort of farts and poos and things. She becomes quite germ phobic and quite anxious about it, to the point where it's giving her stomach aches and sort of an IBS type feeling. She goes to see a doctor, and it's just talking really about what goes on from there. This hit a bit of a nerve for me because my daughter suffers from anxiety stomach aches, and so it's something that I'm quite used to and something that I know quite a bit about, or having experienced it, and actually something that I experience ever so slightly myself. My labour was brought on, my labour with my daughter was brought on by catching the norovirus, and for quite a long time, and even to this day, if someone in my family, if Matilda or Jamie gets sick and vomits, or someone vomits around me, I do get quite anxious and can get quite like uptight and worried about it. I don't like being sick. It makes me feel, I mean, no one likes being sick, but I genuinely feel like I can't breathe, and I feel quite claustrophobic, and so the anxiety behind the idea that it might happen does make my stomach turn a bit and make me need the toilet. It's quite a strange experience, and yeah, so I can fully sympathise with young Raina in what she was going through. So I thought that was really interesting from that point of view. But Raina Telgemeier always tells a story with some really good wit, and a really good look at sort of what it's like to be the age that she's writing at. I mean, this is aimed at sort of a middle grade audience, and she really has that sort of thing that they're interested in, you know, the friendships and the way that friendships are formed, and how the kids talk to each other, which I think is really fun to see. I also really liked that at the towards the end of this, she starts to sort of dispel this idea of not talking about things, because as soon as the girls start sharing things with each other and sharing things about each other, sharing things about themselves that perhaps they've been kept secret, or they've been worried about, or they haven't shared, you know, things to do with getting your period or going to talk to a therapist. It turns out that there's loads more people out there that have similar situations, or do have, you know, go to see therapists, or have similar problems to you, and it's not until you start talking about those things that it becomes less onerous, because, you know, a problem shared is a problem halved, and you start to feel like you're not alone. And I just thought that was a really interesting message that came through this, albeit in quite a light-hearted way. So I really enjoyed this one, and I gave it 3 stars. The next book which I read is Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs by Caitlin Doherty, and in fact I listened to this on audio read by Caitlin herself, and it was a really nice way to do it. I love Caitlin's YouTube channel, I love her witty humour, and it was really great to hear her read this via the Audible app herself. So for me, this was back to Caitlin's sort of best writing style, if you will. I really liked Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. I then read, I think it's From Here to Eternity, which I didn't enjoy so much. And so I was interested going into this one to see how I would feel. And I love, she's taken these questions that children have asked her, real life questions that children have asked her when she's either met them or seen them at talks, or, you know, with family friends who've got children. And she's taken the questions that they ask, because children can be a lot more candid and very gruesome sometimes, and she's talked about them in a frank and honest way, and sort of dispelled some of the myths and talked about some of the things, and, you know, the questions that people have asked. So for example, why don't animals dig up all graves? What would happen if you swallowed a bag of popcorn before you died and were then cremated? What if they make a mistake and bury me when I'm just in a coma? If someone is eating something when they die, does their body digest the food? Can you describe the smell of a dead body? Will my hair keep growing in my coffin after I'm buried? I mean, there's loads of different questions in here, and I really love how Caitlin talks and doesn't necessarily dumb down her answers for the children. She talks quite frankly, she talks in quite detail, and she dispels some of those myths and she answers those questions really well. So I really enjoyed this, and it's got artwork in here by someone called Diane Ruse, I think. I apologise if I've said that wrong, but I really loved the artwork. I thought it really suited the book, and it's really cool. So yes, I really enjoyed this and I gave it 4 stars. Another book that I listened to on audio that I really enjoyed was Blonde by Joyce Carol Oates. This is a mahoosive book, but it really flew past. The story was so engaging and so interesting that it really flew past. However, this is the imposter in this video, and because I didn't realise until I had read it and heard a little bit more and looked up and researched a little bit more, that actually this is a fictionalisation of Marilyn's life. So it's not making stuff up all the time, but there's definitely embellishments and poetic license used. So although it's based on her life, it is a novelisation of it. So this can't be counted really as non-fiction. Well, it can't be counted as non-fiction, but I'm going to talk about it here anyway. So published in 2001, this was written by Joyce Carol Oates, as if Marilyn Monroe is looking back on her life and telling us about what happened. It speaks of her difficult childhood growing up with a parent with a mental illness, and how that led to her being taken into the foster care system, and how then at a young age, just barely coming up to 18, she was pushed into marriage lest she catch the eye of the foster father who'd never strayed from his wife, but who the wife was sure was starting to look at Norma Jean in a way that wasn't healthy. And so rather than addressing that, the foster mother pushed Norma Jean into a marriage at a really young age, and this just led on to time and time again that she is used and abused and treated really poorly by the men in her life especially. I really liked how this was written. It was very poetic, there was lots of description. I really liked how it gave me an insight, I feel, into Marilyn's life and how it must have been, and her personality and her naivety, I think, in some ways, and it's definitely made me more interested in watching some of her films. I don't think I've ever watched a Marilyn Monroe film, maybe one, I don't know, but I'm definitely interested in looking back on that. And also there is a mini series, I believe, that came out not long after this was published that I'm really interested in watching now as well, and just to see it in a different medium. So that was a really good bonus of reading this. It's made me much more interested in finding out more about her life. So I ended up really enjoying this one, and I'm going to give it 4 stars. And then the final book I want to talk about is a good talk by Mira Jacob, and this is a brilliant book, and I'm so pleased that I picked it up. I picked it up because I saw it on quite a few channels recently. It gave me the push, and what initially had put me off was the art style wasn't necessarily my favourite type of art style, and it was expensive, and so I'd put it off, but I thought now's the opportunity. It's non-fiction November to pick this one up and to give it a go, and I'm so pleased I did. It's a graphic novel set as a conversation between Mira and her son when at 6 he begins to notice the differences in people, and coming from a mixed race family, he's half Indian, half Jewish. He has questions and she tries to answer them as honestly as she can, but appropriately for a 6-year-old. And we then flash between these conversations and her life. I feel like this book is very timely given the current political climate in the US. And one thing that I really took from this that I have heard quite a few times recently, Mira is sort of given this idea that she should be thankful that she's been published, and that she should answer these questions about what it's like to be published and to have Indian characters. And she sort of thinks, I don't want to be a spokesperson for all these people, I shouldn't have to be, and she sort of longs for the day really where there is such a large amount of fiction written by, or books, doesn't have to be fiction, written by Indian authors on the shelves, that she doesn't then have to be the spokesperson for that. And I think this is the case. I've heard numerous people recently actually in different talks talk about that, and that's not just people of colour, that's also other marginalised voices who feel like they don't want to be the spokesperson for everybody like them, because everyone's experience is different within there, and also it means that there's not enough of those people's voices being written and more so being published. And that's really I heard someone speak at Worldcon saying that you know, wouldn't it be great if there came a time where you could pick up a book written by a queer person that was rubbish, but it had still been published. You know, there's so much rubbish fiction out there written by straight white men, and yet it gets published. And wouldn't it be great if we were at a stage where the market had so much fiction written by all these other people, all these other groups, all these marginalised voices, people of colour, that there was the limit and the space there for there to be shit books there too. So I thought that was really interesting, and it made me think back to that talk, which I really enjoyed. It's also not done in a big doom and gloom way. There is obviously things in there that are sad and worrying and troublesome, but there is also, it's been done with a really good witty humour, and I think using this conversation with their 6-year-old is a really great way of doing that, because children come out with things that perhaps adults restrain themselves from saying, or ask the questions that no one really knows the answers to, and highlights, you know, these are things that people think about and want to know the answers to, and I just thought that was really impactful. So I really loved this too, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. So 3 non-fiction and 1 imposter, but some very good books, 1 3-star and 3 4 stars, all really good, and I'm just loving getting into non-fiction. So hopefully there will be some more for you soon, but I think I'm going to wrap this one up here, because otherwise you're going to be watching really long videos, and I will come back to you soon with some more books that I've read. So that's it from me, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye for now, BookTube.